A boy stands in a temple plated with gold, and the crown they have just set on his head slides down past his eyebrows. It is too big for him. His father wore it, his grandfather wore it, and now it sits crooked on a child who is holding a scepter heavier than his own arm, in a room where the walls themselves are covered in beaten gold, in the richest kingdom the ancient Near East had ever seen. I is not the problem. His idols are not the problem. He does not have any yet. His enemies are not even at the gate. He has inherited something he did not build. And so have you, maybe. Some of you are standing in a mess you did not make. Some of you are paying, right now, for a choice somebody else made before you were born. And some of you are sure you have already cleaned the whole house. 4 centuries. 20 kings. One bloodline that God himself had sworn, with an oath, to keep forever. And it will end in a heap of ash smoldering on a hill, with the last king in that line chained and blind and stumbling toward a foreign city. 20 kings. That is how many sat on David's throne in Judah, from around 931 BC to 586 BC, and nearly all of them failed. But here's the part that should stop you. They did not fail in 20 different ways. They failed in the same way, over and over, for 400 years. Now, if you asked most people why the kingdom of Judah collapsed, they would tell you it was the idols, or the foreign armies, or a faithless, stubborn people. And every one of those answers is in the Bible. But none of them is the thing the Bible keeps naming, because there is one sentence, one short, quiet sentence, that comes back again and again, king after king, and it is even attached to the good ones. It is not what they added, it is what they would not tear down. The high places were not taken away. It is like a man who bolts every door in his house, checks every lock twice, and leaves one window open on the ground floor, every night, for a lifetime, and then wonders how they got in. That is what we are going to do in this video. We are going to walk the kings of Judah in order, from the richest to the last, and we are going to hear that one sentence come back and back and back, until we understand exactly what nobody in 400 years would name. Let us start at the beginning. It begins not with a failure, but with the richest king who ever lived. Solomon had everything. Wisdom the whole world traveled to hear, gold arriving by the ton, a temple so beautiful that a visiting queen said the half had not been told her. And at the end of all of it, the Bible gives us this. 1 Kings, chapter 11, verse 4. When Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods. Read that slowly. Not his enemies, not a war, his wives. The people closest to him, in his own house, turned his heart 1 degree at a time, until verse 6 says it plainly. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord. Went not fully. That is the whole story of Judah in 3 words. Not a man who turned and ran the other way. A man who kept walking mostly in the right direction and left one road open behind him. And here's what he built with that open heart. Verse 7. Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh and for Molech, high places. On the hills around Jerusalem, in the shadow of the golden temple, the wisest man alive built shrines to the gods of his wives. Molech, whose worship, generations later, would demand children in the fire. Solomon did not burn anyone. He just built the altar and left it standing. That is the back door. And it will stay open, on those hills, for almost 400 years. Then Solomon dies around 931 BC, and the crown passes to his son Rehoboam. And Rehoboam is handed the one thing his father never had, a warning. The people come to him and say, "Your father made our load heavy. Lighten it, and we will serve you." The old men who had served Solomon tell him, "Say yes. Speak kindly to them this once, and they are yours forever." But chapter 12, verse 8. He forsook the counsel of the old men, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him. And the young men tell him to do the opposite. So Rehoboam stands up in front of a nation asking for relief. And he says, verse 11, "My father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions." Think about what that word meant. A whip is leather. A scorpion was a whip with iron teeth worked into the ends, so that every strike did not just bruise the skin, it tore it. That is the answer this new king gives to a people begging for mercy. And the kingdom splits that same day. 10 tribes walk out. Rehoboam is left with Judah alone. The golden kingdom is already cracked down the middle, and we are only 1 generation in. Now the throne passes down, and something surprising happens. Some of these kings are good. Asa tears down idols. His great-grandson Jehoshaphat walks with God, teaches the law, does what is right. If you were reading quickly, you would exhale here and think, finally, the line is safe. A good king means a saved kingdom. But watch what the Bible does. It praises Jehoshaphat, and then, in the very same breath, 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 43, it adds this. He walked in all the ways of Asa his father. He turned not aside from it, doing that which was right in the eyes of the Lord. Howbeit, and there it is, howbeit the high places were not taken away. There it is for the first time attached to a good man. Not a villain, not an idolater. A king the Bible calls faithful. And the one thing said against him is the one thing said against almost all of them. The window is still open. The shrines Solomon built are still standing on those hills. A good king walked right past them and left them for his son. And his son would not be nearly so careful. From Jerusalem, the rot spreads north into the royal family itself, because at some point, a king of Judah makes a decision that looks like politics and turns out to be poison. He marries his son into the house of Ahab, the most notorious royal family in the northern kingdom, the family of Jezebel. And the Bible tracks exactly what that marriage does. 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 18. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. One wedding. And the worst family in the north is now inside the bloodline of David, teaching Judah's princes how to worship. One wedding, and the daughter of Ahab is now queen mother in Jerusalem. Her name is Athaliah, and when her own son the king dies, she does something no one in David's line had ever done. She tries to murder every royal heir, her own grandchildren, to seize the throne herself. The bloodline God swore to keep forever comes within one hidden infant of being wiped out entirely, saved only because a single baby, Joash, is smuggled out and hidden in the temple for 6 years. That is how close the promise came to ending, around 841 BC, and it came that close through a marriage a king made for politics. It keeps sliding, generation by generation, and then it hits the bottom. His name is Ahaz, and he takes the throne around 735 BC. And Ahaz is where the back door stops being a quiet shrine on a hill and becomes something that will make your stomach turn. 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 3. He made his son to pass through the fire. That is Molech. The altar Solomon built and left standing. 3 centuries earlier, Ahaz finally walks up to it and puts his own child on it. Nobody added a new sin here. Ahaz just used a door that had been propped open since the Golden Age. It is the way debt passes down a family. One generation runs up the balance on a card, and it is the children who inherit the bill, paying interest on purchases they never made. And then Ahaz does something almost unbelievable. He is in Damascus, meeting a foreign king, and he sees an altar there, a pagan altar, and he likes it. So chapter 16, verse 10, he sends the design back to Jerusalem to the priest and has an exact copy built and installed in the temple of God. Picture that. Workmen carrying a replica of a Syrian altar in through the temple doors and setting it down right next to the bronze altar that had stood there since Solomon. The Bible's own summary of the man is brutal. 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 22. In the time of his distress did he trespass yet more against the Lord. This is that King Ahaz. This is that King Ahaz. Even the writer cannot hide the disgust. And the people follow him down. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 15 describes what happens to a nation that chases nothing for long enough. They followed vanity and became vain. That is a terrifying little line. You do not just worship an empty thing. You slowly become as empty as the thing you worship. Now let me stop and be honest with you about something, because a lot of people online will speak with total confidence about things the Bible does not fully explain. Here is one of them. We are never told exactly what these high places look like, or why even the good kings could not bring themselves to tear them down. Scholars have guessed. Some think many of them started as places to worship the true God, just in the wrong way. Old, familiar, comfortable, the way people had always done it. Some think it was politics, that powerful local families protected their hilltop shrines, and a king who touched them risked a revolt. Some think it was simply money, that the traffic and the offerings were too profitable to shut off. We do not know for certain. But here's what we do know. Whatever the reason, that one sentence keeps tolling like a funeral bell over one reign after another. The high places were not taken away, and every single time it rings, a door is still standing open. So let us catch our breath and see where we are. We started with Solomon, the richest king alive, building the shrines and leaving them up. We watched Rehoboam crack the kingdom in a single afternoon with a threat about scorpions. We watched good kings walk past the high places and leave them for their sons. And now we have watched Ahaz put his own child in the fire on an altar his ancestor built. Same door, 400 years. If seeing these kings in order is helping you understand the story in a way you never have before, then do me a favor. Help somebody else see it too. Subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with one person who needs it. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people it is meant for. Because now, for one single generation, someone is finally going to walk up to that door and reach for the hinge. And then, for one generation, someone finally reaches for the hinge. His name is Hezekiah, and he does the thing no king in 300 years had been willing to do. 2 Kings, chapter 18, verse 4. He removed the high places and brake the images and cut down the groves. Stop and feel the weight of that first phrase. He removed the high places. The sentence that had tolled like a funeral bell over king after king, not taken away, not taken away, not taken away, is finally broken. Somebody climbed those hills. Somebody took a hammer to the tall stone pillars his own ancestors had left standing and brought them down, one after another, until the skyline around Jerusalem was bare. And the Bible gives him the highest praise it gives any king in the whole line. Verse 5. He trusted in the Lord God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him, none like him. Not even David gets that exact sentence. And the reason Hezekiah earns it is not that he won a war or built a palace. It is that he walked up to the one door every good man before him had left open, and he shut it, which proves something that should land hard. The door could be closed. For 300 years, everyone acted as if those shrines were just part of the landscape, as permanent as the hills they stood on. And Hezekiah proved, in a single reign, that they were not permanent at all. They came down when one man decided they would. Every king who left them standing had made a choice, not accepted a fact. But here's the cruelty of this story. What one generation tears down, the next can build right back. Because Hezekiah has a son. His name is Manasseh, and he takes the throne as a boy of 12 and holds it for 55 years, the longest reign of any king in Judah's history. 55 years to undo one father's work. And chapter 21, verse 3, tells us exactly how he spent it. He built up again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. Read those words next to his fathers. Hezekiah removed. Manasseh built up again. The same stones, the same hills. The sun walking out with the fallen pillars and standing them back up one by one as if the hammer had never fallen. It is the oldest, most exhausting thing in the world. You clean a room top to bottom in an afternoon, and a week later it looks as if you never touched it. Except this was not a room. This was a nation's soul, and it took one boy king 55 years to put every idol back. And Manasseh does not stop at shrines, verse 16. Moreover, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much, till he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another. The city ran with it. Now here's the line that should genuinely frighten you, because it tells you this damage does not stay in one lifetime. Long after Manasseh is dead, long after another good king has come and gone, the Bible says this, chapter 23, verse 26. Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him withal. Because of Manasseh. A king who had been in his grave for decades was still bending the fate of the entire kingdom. That is what a door left open does. Hezekiah reigned from around 715 BC and shut it. Manasseh took the throne around 697 BC and spent 55 years wedging it back open. Two kings, father and son, one generation apart, and they pointed the whole nation in opposite directions. One of them shut the door. The other did not just open it. He tore off the hinges, and into all of that, the idols rebuilt, the blood in the streets, the wrath already spoken over the kingdom. One more boy is about to be crowned. One boy inherits all of it, the idols, the blood in the streets, the wrath already spoken over the kingdom. And he does the bravest thing any of them ever did. His name is Josiah. He comes to the throne at 8 years old, a child in the wreckage his grandfather Manasseh left behind. And for the first years of his reign, the temple of God is a neglected building, half forgotten, in need of repair. So Josiah orders it cleaned and mended. And in the middle of that repair work, buried somewhere in the dust of a temple nobody had truly cared for in decades, a workman finds a scroll. It is the book of the law, the word of God himself, lost inside God's own house. That is where they had gotten to. The covenant had been mislaid like an old letter that slides behind a drawer and stays there for years, until one day you are cleaning and your hand closes on it, and you open it, and it is the most important thing you have ever needed to read, and you are reading it far too late. They bring the scroll to the king and read it aloud to him, and watch what a real heart does when it finally hears the truth. 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 11. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes. He tore his robes right there on the throne. No excuses, no arguing. This young king hears how far his people have fallen, hears the judgment hanging over them, and he does not defend himself. Verse 13. Great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book. Because our fathers. He sees it. He is the first one in this whole story who looks back down the line and understands. This was not built in a day, and it was not built by me alone. Every open door, every standing shrine, every altar nobody would tear down, handed from father to son to grandson, all the way down to me. And instead of shrugging, he weeps, and then he moves. Josiah launches the most thorough reform any king in Judah ever attempted. He goes further than Hezekiah. He does not just pull down the high places. He grinds them to powder, burns the idols, tears out the altars, cleanses the temple. He marches north to Bethel, to an altar that had stood since the kingdom first split apart, and he tears it down and burns human bones on it to defile it forever. Then he gathers the whole nation for a Passover so complete. The Bible says there had been no Passover like it since the days of the judges, not in the entire history of the kings. This is around 622 BC, and for one shining moment, it looks as though a single man's heart might be enough to turn 400 years around. The Bible's verdict on him is staggering. Chapter 23, verse 25. Like unto him was there no king before him, that turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might. Now stop, because you may be thinking the thing almost everyone thinks here. Surely this is the happy ending. Surely a heart like that saves the kingdom. David was a man after God's own heart, and his line was blessed. So a king this devoted must turn the whole thing around. But that is not what the covenant promise ever meant. God swore to keep David's line. He never swore that each individual king would escape the harvest of what had been sown. And Josiah, the best of all of them, is about to prove it in the hardest way imaginable. Because the doors that had been left open for 400 years do not close just because one good man finally cries. Josiah goes out to face Pharaoh Necho of Egypt at a place called Megiddo, around 609 BC. And chapter 23, verse 29, tells it with brutal speed. Pharaoh Necho slew him at Megiddo when he had seen him, the best king since David, cut down in the prime of a reform that was working. And the whole nation feels it. 2 Chronicles chapter 35, verse 24, says all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. The reform did not outlive the reformer. Within a few short years, everything he tore down would start creeping back, and this time there would be no one left to stop it. But before we leave him, I want you to sit with one image. A king on his throne, hearing the sins of generations he did not commit, and tearing his own robes and weeping for a people who did not deserve it. A ruler grieving over a city that was already under sentence. Centuries later, another king from this very line stood on a hill and looked down over that same city of Jerusalem, and he wept over it. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered thy children together, and ye would not. Josiah wept for the sins of his fathers. Christ wept for the sins of the world, and then walked down the hill and took the wrath that we had earned onto himself. Josiah could only mourn the judgment. Jesus stepped into it. And that is why the last king in this line matters more than any of them. After Josiah, the throne empties fast. 4 kings in 23 years, and then the last one. His name is Zedekiah. He is the final man to sit on David's throne in Jerusalem, and the Babylonian army is already at the walls. For months the city starves behind its gates while Nebuchadnezzar waits. And when the walls finally break, Zedekiah runs. He slips out at night toward the plains, and the Babylonians ride him down. What happens next is the single hardest thing to read in this entire story. and I am going to give it to you exactly as the Bible does, because it is the last image of David's line on that throne. 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 7. They slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. Sit with the order of that sentence. First they make him watch his sons die. That is the last thing his eyes ever do. And then, so that the horror of it can never be replaced by any other sight, they blind him. The final picture Zedekiah carries for the rest of his life is the murder of his children. Then they lock brass chains onto a blind man and march him more than 1,300 kilometers on foot to Babylon. And behind him, verse 9, he burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house, the golden temple, the one Solomon built, the one a boy king had once stood inside with a crown too big for his head. It is on fire. 400 years began in a room plated with gold. They end with that same room burning against the sky while a blind king stumbles away and never sees it. This did not stay inside the pages of the Bible, either. The historian Josephus records the fall and Zedekiah's blinding. A clay tablet we call the Babylonian Chronicle records Nebuchadnezzar taking the city. And out in the ruined fortress towns, archaeologists found letters scratched on broken pottery in those very months. One soldier writing that he is watching for the fire signals of Lachish, because he can no longer see the signals of Azekah. You can hear a kingdom going dark, one city at a time, in a dead man's handwriting. So why did every king after David fail? Now you can answer it, and you can answer it better than the easy answers. It was not one great sin. It was not one foreign army. It was not one bad king. It was one door left open and passed down, from a wise old man who built a shrine and would not tear it back down, through good kings who walked right past it, to a boy who put his son in its fire, all the way to a blind man watching his own sons die. So let me leave you 3 things to carry out of this. First, the thing that destroys a kingdom is almost never the great obvious sin that everyone can see. It is the small thing, tolerated, protected, and handed down. The high place nobody would name. Second, and this one is for you, right now. The door you will not close today does not kill you today. It waits. It waits for whoever comes after you, the people who inherit what you leave standing. What you tolerate, they will live inside. And third, every golden crown in this story eventually fell. The wise one, the devoted one, the reformer, the child. Every last one of them ended in a grave or in chains. The throne that God swore would last forever was a heap of ash on a hill. So was the promise a lie? Because God had said it plainly to David. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 16. Thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever, forever. And here it is, burned to the ground. Unless the throne he meant was never the one made of gold. Centuries after the fire, a child was born in that same broken line of David. He was not crowned in a temple. He was crowned with thorns. He did not sit on a throne of gold. He was lifted up on a Roman cross. And when they had done their worst, that king walked out of a grave that could not hold him. Every other king in this line left a door open and passed the ruin down to his children. This one closed the only door that ever truly mattered, and passed his own kingdom down to us. The temple built by hands burned in a single night. The throne he holds, no army can reach, and no fire can touch. That is the kingdom that was established forever. Not the gold, the king who wore the thorns. If this walk through the kings of Judah showed you something you had never seen before, subscribe and stay with us, because the next story is already waiting. Thank you for watching, and may the God who keeps his promises, even through fire, keep you.